Okay, hi, my name is Ralph Tomaselli. I'm the editor of the Record Journal, and I want to welcome you to tonight's candidate forum, which is co-sponsored by the Record Journal and the Midstate Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so we'll begin with the candidates for mayor, and this is scheduled for 30 minutes. Each candidate will get 90 seconds when they're asked a question directly. Oh my, are you all hearing me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Better now? Was I too far away from the microphone? No. Okay. I can be loud sometimes, so I want to guard against that. Okay. What I was saying was each candidate will get 90 seconds to respond to a direct question, and then the other candidate would get 30 seconds to rebut. Okay? And I think that's it. And if things go smoothly, and I'm sure they will, we'll have 1 minute closing statements as long as we have time, okay? All right, now I want to introduce the candidates. First, we have Kevin Scarpati, who is unaffiliated, endorsed by the Democratic and We the People parties. Okay, and we have Ernestine Holloway, who is a petitioning candidate. Okay, so with that, I will let Matt or Jeff take it away.
I'm going to start out with a very general and open-ended question in hopes that you will fill in the blanks, which is, what do you consider Meriden's strengths and what do you consider Meriden's weaknesses?
Kevin's going to go first, yes. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Special thanks to the Meriden Record Journal for allowing us to come out here this evening to just kind of voice our platforms and fill you in on why we all believe, all the candidates believe, we are best suited for office. I've stated for many years that I believe Meriden's greatest strength are the people who make up Meriden, our very diverse population. All 60+ thousand of our residents come from all sorts of different backgrounds, both racially, ethnically. We have a greatly diverse population. And so I would start by saying I believe that's our greatest strength. I think we see it in our school systems, and that's what contributes to the betterment and the success here in our schools. Our challenges, I think, are things that we see on a daily basis, and we hear about, whether it's through the paper, albeit I think public safety has been an issue that we have been fronted with and faced with over the last several years. In particular, this year, we have noticed an increase in gun violence. So that's certainly one of our challenges. And I think it almost goes hand in hand with another one of our challenges, and that's economic development. And that's driving business and growing business in our city. Something that we answer the question, how do we improve ourselves in those fields? Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I'd like to thank the Record Journal and all you fine people that should show up at the city council meetings. Thank you for coming out and supporting this mayoral race. What I'm gonna say is this: our strength are the ability to stay in this town even though the mill rate is sky high and half of us can't afford it. But we manage every day to stick around and work for the betterment of the town. Our greatest assets are our children, who me as a candidate, want to make it better so then when we all gone, that they'll have a place to live and can afford it.
Okay, that's time. Okay, the next question is for, and I guess the way this is going to work, sorry folks. Devin, they're going to get 1 minute 30 seconds no matter what, right? And then we're counting back to 30 seconds. Is that what it is?
So the first question is 1:30, and then the answer is 30 seconds.
But the screen is showing 1 minute 30 on each one, just so we can keep track. Okay. All right, we'll try it. All right, the next question is for Ernestine. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to build off of something Kevin touched on. which is what should the city do to address the recent spike in shootings, both to make the city more safe and make residents feel more safe?
Well, it starts with how we police the area. I think we have to do a little bit better with community policing. The way that they have it set up now, it works half, but it can work better. I believe that they should assign officers to a certain area. We need to bring the police officers back on the beat, where they walked around, not always in a car, so that they're visible and people can see them. And parents are the key. Keep an eye out. Watch what your children are doing. Don't be afraid to say, you in my neighborhood, you don't belong here, that's not happening here. It takes us both to work together. The police can't do it by itself. We need to work together as a team.
Okay, Kevin?
So it's something that's plagued our community all too frequently, and one thing that I have fought for is the reestablishment of our neighborhood initiative unit, those community police officers, our school resource officers who should be present in our schools. But it's not just a local issue. We need to work with our state officials to make sure that we are expediting arrest warrants, that the judge is not decreasing a bond to let people out of jail that much earlier, and keep those repeat offenders locked up behind bars.
Okay. There's a question for Ernestine. I'm sorry, no, it's back to Kevin. I'm sorry, you guys know, go ahead.
She doesn't get 30 seconds?
Oh,
Yes.
It was her question.
no, Kevin was the rebuttal. Okay, so now,
Well, anyway, in any case, we'll get,
the question goes to Kevin now.
the question was to Kevin.
Yeah.
Following up, Kevin,
Did I say something
on the shootings and the perception of safety, these are all sort of entwined concerns here when it comes to Meriden. And we just went through in the last year, because of budget constraints or however you want to interpret it, the problem with school resource officers being cut. They were cut, they were restored. The neighborhood initiative units, similar thing happened in those cases. What would you say to people who are uneasy about whether such programs, which in the past have proven very effective, at least in terms of making people feel safer, that these kind of things are going to be taken away from them just because of budget reasons? I mean, what kind of assurance can you give to people?
Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, there isn't much assurance I can give them as to the stability of these programs. These are proactive assignments that, unfortunately, when our police department faces very deep cuts, upwards of $200, $300, $400, and $500,000 in cuts, we need to work with the chief to determine where those cuts are made. But I would back up to the beginning as to why the money is being cut. And this was something we, myself and members of the city council who are here, had a heated discussion many a time as to what the appropriate level of funding should be, specifically with this question to our police department. I don't think we are in a time where we can afford cutting back on public safety. I don't think we should be putting our neighborhoods at risk and take a gamble as to whether or not someone's safety is worth the extra $200,000 that we should be able to find elsewhere in our budget. We need to look at our priorities at the top and determine what we feel is in the city's best interest. And it's always been my feeling that public safety should fall at the very top of our list as to what needs to be funded properly, what programs should be instated and kept in our communities so that people do feel safe. Community policing is a real thing that people can call upon an officer in a time of need, and they build that relationship, and that is very, very important.
This is where me and the mayor disagree. The police chief is given a budget. He has a whole bunch of money that the taxpayers give to him. And it's his duty to do what's right by the community and not scare them. He cut his own budget. So if he thought community policing was important, he would not have cut that. he could have found other areas. He didn't have that problem when it came to him retiring, digging into their budget, trying to find that money. So why couldn't he find that money for the neighborhood initiative?
Okay. I should have mentioned, I also have some questions here from the public and from the Midstate Chamber of Commerce, and I was gonna try a question out here. Does that sound okay? Okay. This is for Ernestine. What are your opinions on city incentives to recruit and retain, growing businesses?
I think that incentives are very nice, but we don't have to give away the city. I'll use an example. Knocking down the mills. Somebody wanted to buy it, $30 million. We didn't sell it to them. That would have been enough money to maintain us in taxes and not raise the mill rate. We had the money. So then we go pay somebody from out of town, give them 80% off, a discount. We only gain 20% in taxes from them. We can build without giving away our city. I think it's a shame. We can fix the water, that'll bring them. Clean up downtown, that'll bring them. Who's gonna run a business downtown when the drunks are meeting you there? Panhandlers are meeting you there. These are things that we can clean up to make our community effective and make people wanna live down there. You know, move their business down there. Open homes, mom and pop businesses. If we don't, as a city, clean it up, I don't care what incentives we offer, they're not gonna come. We bear the responsibility.
So I don't think we have enough incentives out there to bring business in. It's, as I mentioned, one of our biggest challenges that we face. We have some assistance to bring people in. We can help with moving. We, of course, have tax abatements in certain areas of our city. I would beg to differ that they do work. We have only seen the development on East Main Street, for example, something very tangible, something very real, that has only worked because of the incentives we've given those business owners to open. And I would say 20% of something is better than 0% of nothing.
Okay, go ahead. We can ask a question to Kevin.
For the first time in several years, the city was able to lower its mill rate in this budget in large part by using some of the Eversource money to offset spending. However, that money won't be available in this upcoming budget process. So what, if anything, should the city look at to trim its spending, and please be as specific as possible?
Sure, so yes, we're proud of the fact that we lowered the mill rate this year. However, as you mentioned, that was pretty much in lieu of the fact that we had $3.4 million come through Eversource after we had under-assessed their property. And fortunately, Eversource recognized that, realized that, and worked with us instead of against us. And so, we can't always look to cut our way out of problems. I think we need to be realistic and say we need to do our best at watching our purse strings and reeling in expenses wherever we can. But we also need to find ways to raise revenues. We need to find ways to drive economic development, to increase our tax base on the commercial side so that our residential homeowners that are out in our audience tonight aren't the ones that are solely bearing the burden of a tax increase. I think some of the things we have done as a council and as mayor is look creatively to find how we can invest for future, and so that the Eversource funds aren't going to one-time projects, they're going to investments in our future, so that we don't bear that burden year over year, and so that it's not just necessarily a one-time increase. So for example, what we just did this past Monday, instead of using $1.7 million surplus that we had to go towards special projects, we reinvested that into two areas. One going into our rainy day fund, and two going into our health fund to help offset that going forward.
Well, this is where me and the mayor really disagree, because we had a referendum and people worked hard and they said they wanted cuts. So we worked for the people. So we need to do what they asked. We may have not raised the mill rate like he said, but we spent 7% higher than we normally spend. We prepaid for things next year, so you think the taxes are lowered, but they aren't. It's just that we bought stuff early. Stop with the smoke and screens and cut the taxes like the referendum said. The people have spoken.
Okay, so the next question is for Ernestine Holloway.
Well, I guess what I'd like to do is follow up on what you just said. And I get it that everybody wants their taxes lowered, but what specifically would you cut in the city budget in order to bring taxes down?
First of all, I'll turn out all them lights that we have on all night long. Why is a school burning all night long and nobody's in it? That'll cut down on Eversource. We don't have to give them that much money. Number two, what we have to do is say, yes, you can come in here. We'll bring you in, but we don't have to give away our whole house. You know, what we can do is open up the mom and pop shops. Train people in our community to go into entrepreneurship instead of going outside of the community. You know, we have people that own businesses that live here that can't operate their business here because they can't afford the taxes. So why not give them the same incentive that you give big business? That way we know the people in our community and we don't mind supporting them. But we have to give them the support that they need also. And not open up these new buildings. We're just taking houses, taking them off the tax market. No, don't do that. We got enough buildings going to Meriden Housing Authority. We don't need to give them no more. Let them work with what we got. We're study building, but nobody is coming in. So how does that work? You got a glass and you want coffee and there's nothing in there, you won't have coffee, you'll just have air. So that's what they've been selling us, a bunch of hot air. Let's go back to the table. We don't need a banquet hall. We need big business and we need mom and pop shops to come in and let them know that we embrace them.
One thing we saw this year was a large turnover in city staff. We offered a retirement incentive program where nearly 10% of the workforce, almost 60 people who had worked for the city for decades, had retired. In turn, we were able to fill some of those positions, and many of them at a much lower salary than the person that was there previously. I think we need to continue to look for efficiencies in government and not necessarily fill every single position that either retired or left, but figure out how to operate more efficiently in government.
Okay, the next question is going to be for Kevin Scarpati.
Yeah, let's stay on the retirement incentive program, and I'm just curious, do you think that passing that was a mistake at all, given how much experience and institutional knowledge the city lost with the 58 employees who retired, and the fact that some of those employees had needed to be brought back on a part-time basis because the city couldn't fill their positions fast enough?
Sure, so I think that's an interesting question because I certainly was not in favor of a retirement incentive that requested and required people to retire at June 30th, but then at the same time we allowed many of those individuals to come back and work after the 1st of July for several weeks, several months. Some are still working in city government as we speak today. Do I think it was a mistake? No, I don't think it was a mistake. Do I think we were ready for it would be the question. I don't think we were ready for it. I don't think that city staff, we had a turnover in our HR department. We had a lot of turnover recently, exclusive of the retirement incentive, of department heads. And with all new department heads coming on board, not necessarily knowing their roles and responsibilities solely as department heads, with experienced veteran staff or without, they were faced with a much larger challenge than I think we anticipated. So I think we could have been more prepared for it. We could have taken more time with it, but I don't believe it was overall a mistake.
I disagree. I think that they knew, the city manager knew what he had planned. It was their plan. They decided this is what they was gonna do, along with the police chief. It didn't make sense to me that he retired and yet we brought him back. You knew 6 months to a year that he was going to retire. And we know that because if you look back into the videos, you will see. They went into everybody's pension, so they had a secret meeting. So they knew that he was going to retire, so they had time to find somebody else.
Okay. The next question is going to be for Ernestine, and I think I'm going to ask it if that's okay. Ernestine, you've brought up the current police chief twice so far. And as you know, the city will be selecting a new police chief. Can you tell me the qualities you'd like to see in the next chief?
I would like him to be able to be transparent and not have any secrets. I'd like for the community to be part of picking a police chief so that they can get to know him to see if he fits this town. Just because you're a police chief does not mean that you fit Meriden, or vice versa. You know, this is something that I find offensive, that you go and make major decisions and don't involve us. It is our tax dollars, it's our money. I also think that he shouldn't own homes in Meriden. I think that the only home that he should own is his own. You know, I think that him being the police chief we have now, he has a lot of water underneath the bridge, and we don't need one that has water underneath the bridge. We want the water to stay where it's supposed to be and not murky. I also think that he needs to be able to walk the community, not just stay in the office. He needs to be visible. He needs to be able to lift the morale of the people and the police department. You know, that friendly atmosphere, but yet tell you, if you break the law, you're still going to jail. So there has to be a balance, something that we haven't had.
So I'll just touch upon something really briefly. The fact that we knew the chief was going to retire 6 months to a year from now is false. The chief actually is eligible to retire at 60, or needs to retire at 65. So our current chief has another 5 to 7 years before he needed to retire. But words I've written down for a new chief: transparent, involved, visible, in touch with the community, experienced, and boosting morale, as Ernestine said, boosting morale not just within our community but also within our police department.
Okay, the next question is going to be for Kevin, and I think I'm going to stay on this thread, if that's right, guys, because this question is for Kevin. And Kevin, yeah, we'll have a new police chief in about a year, but the current chief will be there for a while longer, and one of our greatest frustrations at the Record Journal is getting information on shootings, stabbings, fatalities. I mean, we've had cases where murders weren't publicly discussed for days. You've expressed frustration about that. Other counselors have. I know there's been some efforts, there's been some meetings, public safety meetings, to try to get information out there. Is there anything else the mayor can do to try to get important public information on crimes out quicker?
Sure. So it's not just frustrating to the Record Journal. This solely is not an issue that the Record Journal has with lack of information getting to them. I think you'll hear from some city councilors who are frustrated not getting the information quickly. And of course, members of the public. If something happens down the street from your house, next door to your house, in your backyard, you should know what is happening. We owe it to you, because that's who we ultimately answer to. It's one of my biggest frustrations as well, that as the mayor of the city, you need to go and ask several hours later, well, hey, where's the press release on this? To find out that if you hadn't raised the question, there wasn't going to be a press release sent. So it needs to be relayed to the existing chief, who's going to be here through June 30th of next year, as well as to anyone coming on board, that as much information that can be shared should be shared with the public, with the Record Journal, with elected officials. Obviously, a lot of this is ongoing information or ongoing investigations and sensitive information that we can't always release, but we should try and be as transparent as possible to let you know that if it's truly an isolated incident, what that means being an isolated incident. And that a lot of the shootings that have occurred in our city, we believe to be related to one another. And so it goes back to what I stated earlier by locking these people up sooner.
Well, this is my thing.
Okay, Ernestine, go ahead.
This is my thing. We hired the police chief. The city council hired him. So you mean to tell me we hired somebody that we can't get information from? So that means he should have been reprimanded. You don't get to tell the city council what you want to tell them about what's going on in our town. This is something that we hired you for. And if you can't do your job, you need to be relieved of your duties. I don't understand that. If I hire you, we can let you go. We did it with the city manager, we could do it again.
Okay, the next question will be for Ernestine. Go ahead, guys.
Did the city council make the right decision in choosing not to approve $9.3 million for a renovation and expansion of the library, and instead approving, I believe it was $7.8 million for a renovation only?
I didn't hear that. You kind of mumbled a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Okay, we'll ask again.
Certainly. So, did the city council make the right decision by not approving the expansion and renovation of the library, and instead only going with the renovation?
I don't think they should have got that much. I think that when they got money, the library, they renovated, they knew that the library had all these defects. What they should have said was, we don't want to renovate, we want a new library. You can't take the money and then come back a year and a half later, if I'm correct with the time, and say, well, we don't want that building anymore. We just want a new one. No, you stick with the one that you just renovated. It's the taxpayers' money. And it wasn't the city council really's decision, it was the people. The people were ready to fight. They did not want a $9.3 million library. They did not want a break room, because they wasn't gonna be selling coffee, for $2 million. That makes no sense, it's ludicrous. We are not New York, we are not a big city that we need that done. We didn't have the money. We should have did a lot better with that. No, they shouldn't have got a penny. They should have just waited around and got money when it came around again. I'm sorry, I love the library, but not $9.3 million worth.
So I said at the council when this was passed, I felt it was a mistake to approve the lesser of the options that were in front of us. I think if we're going to do something and you're going to invest in this larger project, you should do it right the first time, because I truly do believe for those of us who will be around 30, 40 years from now, will likely regret the decision that was made. We heard from the people. We heard from over 2,000 people who took a public survey that said, here's what I want. I want an increased children's center. I want an area for our teens. I want more technology in our library.
Okay. Yes, right. We're going to go to a question for Kevin, and then we're going to do, just to give it, is Kevin up next? Did I get it? Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to do closing statements, okay? So we'll have a question for Keith.
This is the last.
This is the last question. That's what I'm trying to say. Go ahead.
Make it count, Joe.
It puts a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a very convoluted question. I'd like to follow up on the whole library thing. But in a similar context, the city has also been wrestling with how much money to spend on the banquet facility for the golf course. And also approving hangars for the airport. So the broader question to me is, should the city be in the business of running airports or in the business of running golf courses?
In short, I'll say yes, for the simple fact that our airport, for those who may not recall, was under private management not many years ago, terribly run. Our airport has seen tremendous growth just within the last several years through Constance, who is our manager at the airport, Wilma, who's been working as our liaison with city staff, and really turning around our airport, because it's truly an asset for our city. It's an economic development driver as much as it is an airport that people should utilize. So the projects such as the banquet facility and the airport hangars are somewhat unique into themselves, unlike the library, because they generate revenue. There's not too many projects that I can recall in my 10-year history in elected office where I can say that we've approved projects that have brought city back into our general fund. And that's happening with these projects. Now, I don't necessarily agree. I was pretty vocal on the banquet facility with what was showed to us, and I truly did not believe, as I said to the library, if we're going to do it, we should do it right. The banquet facility that was proposed under the $1 million dollar amount was a metal shed, and was not something that I felt we could be proud of, and was not something I felt we should spend anything more than a couple dollars to invest in, which is why I felt a larger project should be necessary.
This is where me and the mayor disagree again. First of all, we've been lied to. Any money that's generated from that airport cannot go into the general fund. It would be illegal. The FAA would chew us a new one. Now, can they pay us back for the money we gave them? Absolutely. How do I know this? Because I called them and I asked them. As far as the banquet hall, we don't need a banquet hall. We got enough, we buy enough stuff. You know, I don't think that they went to anybody. The person, the Board of Health that runs that didn't even know that we were gonna have a banquet hall. So we need to go through the proper channels and do it correct.
Okay. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna go to 90, Devin, we'll do a minute and 30-second closing statements, and we'll let, okay, Kevin has the microphone. We'll let Kevin start.
Again, thank you all very much for attending this evening. I hope that you'll stay around and listen to the next round of questions and answers from our council candidates. I want to thank the city councilors who are here as well, and those who are running in public office. It's not an easy thing to do. I made note of my 10-year history in public office, and it's crazy to think that at 20 years old, I was elected to the Board of Education back in 2009. Since then, running for city council successfully and being your mayor since 2015. And I can truly say, over the last 10 years, I have not taken it for granted at all. There are days I'll wake up and question why I'm doing this, but it's looking back over the course of the last 10 years and looking at everything that we've accomplished, whether it's starting on the Board of Education and seeing us through to full-day kindergarten, seeing us through to 2 new high schools that we can be proud of, and renovations that our kids are now reaping the benefits of now, through our city council and the changes that we've seen over the last several years. To just in short, as mayor, being here in this city, my job is really to help solve problems. And it's whether it's navigating my way through a city council meeting or working with members of the public who reach out to my office for help on a daily basis. And I hope, while I may not always give you the best answer, that I'm here for you whenever you need. And I want to thank all of you again for coming, and my family and friends for all of your continued support.
Everybody, the citizens of Meriden, for coming out to hearing what we had to say, the Record Journal, and the school for having us. But all I've seen in the 10 years that the mayor's been here is a bunch of confusion. I feel that we've had a lot of failed projects. You know, we built those schools. I guess they didn't need grass, or nobody decided to put grass in the budget. I don't know how they did that one. A lot of the tiebreakers where they shouldn't have got money or decisions should have went to a no is because the mayor broke the tiebreaker. You know, this mayor is part, I believe, part of the clique. And we don't need any more cliques. We need people that's gonna be transparent, that's gonna speak the truth, that's not gonna cost us $37,000, that's not gonna cost us $160,000 on the Manny Santos. We need somebody that's gonna stand up for the people. And when the people say we don't want this, he has something that's called a line item veto. He could have went in and vetoed some of that stuff, so the taxpayer would not be burdened the way that they are. So he's been here 10 years too long. It's time that we get some new blood in and see how they work. Give them the same change. You know, we need change. Give them the same challenge that he had, so we can see where they're going. So far, Meriden is going nowhere. People can't afford to live here. So we need some new blood, new decisions. Hopefully you'll vote for me.
Okay, so that concludes the Mayoral portion of this forum. I want to thank Kevin Scarpati and Ernestine Holloway for participating and sticking to the time really well. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do the area council races